This is a drill called gallops. What we're working on here is foot contact pattern and foot contact location. So she's trying to hit both feet flat on the ground, both the second to last and the last. So as she moves in, here's her second to last, flat on the ground, and the last foot also flat on the ground. As she comes into the last foot, there should be a little bit of toe being above the heel before that contact happens, basically flat on the ground. The other thing we're looking for is the location of the foot relative to the hips. We want the takeoff foot to not be very, very far away. We don't want a big reach away from the body so that that knee angle opens up and she kicks all the way out and then down to the ground. She just wants to keep that leg pretty much where it is now, where the shin never gets very far beyond perpendicular to the ground. Just a little bit of extension of the shin, but basically straight up and down. And then the last thing is a little bit of displacement, which means the hips traveling past the point of the foot and not just pure vertical takeoff, but really more horizontal takeoff with a little bit of vertical. It's hard to get these all flat, especially the second to last step, because they have to land and get that flat. But she's doing a good job here. The key is don't try to make these too high or too far. Don't try to make them too big in general. Otherwise, they're going to automatically start landing on the toe. It's just too much for them to take on a flat contact. This drill is called Run, Run, Jump. It's a series of takeoffs where she takes off every other time she hits her takeoff foot. And that's how I just cue it. I just tell them every other time you hit your takeoff foot, make it a jump. And the cues are basically the same as the gallops. She wants to hit the second to last step and the takeoff foot flat. So she lands, she takes a step, takes a second step into the second to last. That step should be flat. You notice she's on the toe here. And then the takeoff step should also be flat. Same way as the gallop. The cues we're looking for are before the contact of the second to last hits. We want to see the toe a little bit above the heel. So she needs to get that shin a little bit more straight up and down so that the toe can be above the heel before that comes down. And then the takeoff step, again, toe above the heel, shin not reaching out too far, foot comes down and back, pretty flat and relatively close to where her hips are. No big reaches there, no big reaches there, and not landing too far away from her body. So this is the second to last, a little flatter there, better there. Every other step is a takeoff, and again the trajectory we're looking at, trying to get some displacement. So she puts that takeoff foot down. It starts right here, the hips are here. We want to see the hips move past the takeoff foot. So she's a little too vertical here. We want to see this displace more forward, and the cue I usually use is just move your hips well past the point that your foot is on. But you can see this is pretty vertical right here. We'd be looking for something more along the lines of that right there. Call this drill 5-run jump. So every 5th time she hits her takeoff step, she jumps. Now this one she didn't do quite right. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So she did that one right. And we're looking for basically the same cues. The reason we add more steps is to create the feeling of a little bit more speed, a little bit more forward displacement, a little bit less pure vertical motion on this. Same cues for the takeoff though when she gets to the second to last step. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the second to last step, we want to see the shin basically vertical. We want to see the toe above the heel. We don't want a lot of reach there. We want a flat contact. She hits that nicely. In the takeoff step, again, we want to see the shin just a little bit extended beyond the knee, not a lot. The toe above the heel, not a lot of reach on the shin, and then a downward and back contact to a flat foot. She's a little toey on that one. And then the displacement forward so that as her toe is leaving the ground, we see good distance between the hips and the foot. So more speed will create more of that, creating less of a pure vertical takeoff, which usually comes from tempering the run a little bit, and that's going to lose the overall speed. So we're trying to get her to transition more run into the takeoff and feel more displacement forward as she hits that takeoff. So she's really jogging through this one now, but you can do this faster, and the more speed you can get behind it, the more effective it is in replicating an actual takeoff. After the 5-run jump, we just move into a 6-step takeoff where we're trying to practice those same takeoff mechanics. So she's running in, we'll show this at full speed. She's running in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the cue on the run is lean forward and push for the first 2 steps, transition up to a tall posture in the middle 2 steps, and be tall for the takeoff on the last 2 steps. So it's lean forward a little bit. She needs to learn how to push a little bit better. But 2 strong steps. See, the second step is not strong. This one's a good lean. This one, she's not doing anything really to push forward. Transition up to a tall posture, and then the last 2 are just like on the other steps we were working on, trying to get to flat, flat. So here we should see a relatively vertical shin, which is okay. We should see the toe above the heel. You can see that's not there, and then you should see a flat contact. You can see she's hitting way up on the toe there. And then into the takeoff step, we should see the shin not extending too far beyond the knee. That's pretty good. The toe above the heel, that's pretty good. The contact is flat. That's slightly toey, but the contact location is close to the hips. That's pretty good. And then on the takeoff, the displacement forward, not too bad here. This is, again, all relative to what kind of speed she's bringing in. If she runs in stronger, the displacement should be pretty good. And she knew she wasn't going to make the pit, didn't have a problem with it. She was just going to put that foot down and just try to keep running. And one of the other cues is make sure you kind of feel the momentum continue through that takeoff after you land. Don't feel like you stop after you land. Keep things moving. This is a great drill for getting them to be patient in the air. This is a 6-step. Sorry, she's into an 8-step approach now, where on the first couple steps we're driving out, trying to drive out strong, and then transitioning to tall on the next couple steps, and on the last 4 steps running tall. The cue on the second to last is the same. Toe above the heel before the contact hits, not quite there, and then a flat contact, not quite there. And then on this takeoff step, trying not to reach too far, keeping that shin just about vertical. That's pretty good. Want to see the toe above the heel. We call that prepping the ankle. Try to get a flat contact. You can see she's toeing on that one. And then as she displaces, the cue, we have this little band here stretched across. Probably, I don't know, maybe 4.5, 5 feet away from the board. And as she comes off the board, the instructions are to kick the stick. So to drop, let the free leg, instead of the free leg coming straight out to a landing position, it drops down and gives her some time in the air. And the cue here is at the time that the thighs cross. When the thighs cross, we want to see as close to a perfectly vertical position from the head through the foot as possible. So this should, even this little bend in the knee here, we want to see that longer. We want to see the shoulders, the hips, the knee, and the foot all lined up in one perfectly straight line. Don't quite have that on this one, but it's pretty close. And then from there, I want to see the thighs come up together. See, she should hold this thigh up a little bit longer while this thigh comes up to meet it. She drops it a little bit to meet. So this is what we call the tuck position. We want that tuck position to be a little bit tighter so the thighs are up closer to parallel to the ground, and then the extension for the landing comes from the knee to the foot. So she doesn't get a whole lot of extension. That's where she hits. And then we want to collapse the knees and hips when they hit the sand. So it's flat contact, displace off the board, hips past the foot, and then drop the free leg to kick the stick. Look for a very vertical position here. Then a tuck position where both thighs come up parallel to the ground. Get some extension from the knee to the ankle, and then after they hit the sand, collapse.